Welcome back to the Love and Relationship Lab. There is a question that quietly follows many women through relationships, dating, and even long after a conversation has ended. Does he ever think about me when I'm not around? It is a simple question, but behind it lives something much deeper. It is not really about text messages or phone calls. It is about significance. We all want to know whether we have left a mark on someone's heart or whether we simply occupy a passing moment in their day. The problem is that modern dating has convinced us to measure a man's interest by the wrong things. We count how many times he texts. We notice how quickly he replies. We analyze every emoji, every pause, every delay. We assume that constant communication automatically means deep emotional investment. But life is rarely that simple. Some men can send messages all day without ever forming a genuine emotional connection. Others may not constantly reach for their phones. Yet, they carry thoughts of one woman with them from morning until night. That distinction changes everything. Before we go any further, if you're interested in understanding relationships through psychology, self-awareness, and timeless wisdom inspired by Carl Jung, subscribe to the Love and Relationship Lab. Every week, we explore the deeper forces that shape attraction, love, and lasting connection. Now, let's uncover what really happens when a man cannot stop thinking about you. One of Carl Jung's greatest insights was that human behavior is often driven by forces we barely recognize ourselves. We imagine we are making logical decisions, yet beneath the surface, our unconscious mind quietly directs our attention toward what carries emotional meaning. That is especially true in love. When someone genuinely touches us emotionally, they begin appearing in our thoughts without invitation. A memory surfaces while driving to work. A familiar laugh echoes in the middle of a meeting. A random song suddenly feels connected to one specific person. The mind keeps returning to what the heart has quietly decided matters. This is why a man who truly thinks about you does not always announce it. Sometimes he barely understands it himself. Most women expect love to look loud. They expect endless messages, daily compliments, and constant reassurance. While those things certainly have their place, they are not the strongest indicators of emotional investment. Attention can be performed. Presence cannot. Anyone can learn what to text. Very few people can fake genuine emotional focus over time. Imagine a man walking through his day. He sees your favorite restaurant. He hears a song you love and reminds him of your way of dancing to it. Someone tells a joke that reminds him of your laugh. He passes a place and remembers that you once told him that you lived there. None of these moments require him to pick up his phone, but every one of them reveals something important. His mind naturally returns to you. That is not discipline. That is attachment. One mistake many women make is believing silence always means indifference. Sometimes it does, but sometimes silence simply reflects personality. Some men process emotions internally. They are thoughtful rather than expressive. They replay conversations in their minds instead of immediately talking about them. This should never become an excuse for emotional neglect or inconsistency. Healthy relationships still require effort, but understanding the difference between emotional reserve and emotional absence can save you from unnecessary confusion. Carl Jung believed that what affects us deeply often awakens parts of ourselves we have ignored. Love does exactly that. When a woman awakens something meaningful inside a man, she becomes more than attractive. She becomes psychologically significant. She reminds him of possibilities. She challenges him to grow. She inspires him to become more intentional. Without realizing it, he begins carrying her into ordinary moments. She becomes part of how he experiences life itself. This explains why genuine connection feels so different from casual attraction. Attraction says, "I enjoy being with you." Connection says, "I carry you with me even when you're gone." Those are two completely different experiences. You have probably experienced this yourself. Have you ever met someone who continued occupying your thoughts days after the conversation ended? Not because you were trying to think about them. Your mind simply kept returning there. That is how meaningful emotional connections operate. They become reference points inside us. The same happens for men. When he genuinely thinks about you all day, his behavior begins changing in quiet but powerful ways. He becomes more observant. He notices little details other people overlook. He remembers things you barely remember saying. He starts paying attention not only to what you say, but to how you say it. He notices when your smile is slightly different. He senses when something feels off before you even explain it. Why? Because his attention has moved beyond surface attraction. His mind has become invested. And attention is one of the purest forms of affection. People naturally remember what they value. They protect what they cherish. They prioritize what continually occupies their thoughts. This brings us to the first, unmistakable sign that a man thinks about you throughout his day. He remembers the small things, not your birthday, not where you work. Almost anyone can remember those. He remembers the conversation you had 3 weeks ago about your childhood. He remembers your favorite dessert. He remembers the story about your grandmother. He remembers the dream you quietly shared one evening while you weren't even expecting him to pay attention. Then one day, he casually brings it up. You stop for a moment. Wait. You remembered that? Of course he did. Because emotionally invested people don't simply hear words. They absorb them. Those little details become valuable because they belong to someone valuable. Notice something important. He usually doesn't mention these memories to impress you. He simply remembers them naturally. That is the difference between genuine attention and performance. One comes from the heart. The other comes from strategy. There is another reason this matters. Memory follows emotion. Psychologists have long understood that. Emotionally meaningful experiences are remembered more clearly than ordinary ones. When you repeatedly appear in his memory, it often reflects the emotional significance you have developed in his inner world. You have become more than another conversation. You have become part of his emotional landscape. That is where real connection begins. The psychology behind why he can't stop thinking about you. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this deeper approach to relationships and psychology, do me a favor and subscribe to the Love and Relationship Lab. Every week, we explore love through psychology, human behavior, and timeless wisdom inspired by Carl Jung. If that's something that interests you, you're in the right place. Now, let's go deeper. Most people assume that attraction is what keeps someone on your mind. It isn't. Attraction gets your attention. Meaning keeps your attention. Think about the people you've met throughout your life. You have probably encountered hundreds, maybe even thousands, of attractive people. Yet only a handful remain unforgettable. Why? Because they made you feel something beyond attraction. The same is true for men. When a woman becomes unforgettable, it is rarely because she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. More often, she represented an emotional experience that his mind keeps revisiting. Carl Jung believed that every meaningful relationship awakens hidden parts of ourselves. Sometimes another person becomes a mirror, reflecting qualities we have ignored, fears we have buried, or dreams we have forgotten. That is why certain people linger in our thoughts long after they leave the room. Not because they were perfect, because they changed something inside us. Imagine a man leaving dinner after spending just 2 hours with a woman. He drives home in silence. Instead of turning on music, he replays parts of the conversation. He remembers how confidently she spoke about something she believed in. He remembers how comfortable the silence between them felt. He remembers laughing harder than he expected. Nothing dramatic happened, yet his mind keeps replaying those moments. That replay is significant. The human brain naturally revisits experiences that carry emotional weight. The more emotionally meaningful an interaction becomes, the more frequently the brain returns to it. Now, here's something many women completely overlook. A man who thinks about you often becomes surprisingly observant, not in an obsessive way, in a caring way. He starts noticing patterns. He recognizes when your energy changes. He notices when your smile isn't quite as bright. He can tell when something is bothering you before you've explained it. This isn't because he suddenly became a psychologist. It's because attention creates awareness. When someone occupies your thoughts, your mind naturally gathers information about them. You begin noticing details that everyone else misses. That leads us to another powerful sign. He starts connecting you to different parts of his life. Perhaps he's grocery shopping and notices your favorite chocolate. He's traveling for work and wonders whether you would enjoy the city. He's watching a movie and immediately thinks she would love this scene. Notice something important. He isn't intentionally trying to think about you. His environment is reminding him of you. Psychologists sometimes call these emotional associations. Once someone becomes emotionally meaningful, ordinary experiences become connected to them. The world starts reminding you of that person. And that's why he suddenly sends you a random picture of a sunset or an article about something you once mentioned. To an outsider, those messages seem insignificant. But psychologically, they reveal something much deeper. His mind naturally linked that moment to you. Now, let's discuss another behavior that often surprises women. He begins asking for your opinion before making certain decisions. Not because he lacks confidence, because your perspective has become valuable. Maybe he's considering changing jobs. Maybe he's thinking about buying a new car. Maybe he's deciding whether to move apartments. Instead of making the decision entirely alone, he asks, "What do you think?" This has very little to do with the decision itself. It has everything to do with trust. When someone repeatedly seeks your perspective, it usually means your voice has become part of their internal dialogue. You've become someone whose opinion matters. That is a very different level of connection than simple attraction. Here's another subtle sign. He becomes more intentional about improving himself. Many people assume men only improve themselves after entering a relationship. In reality, genuine emotional connection often inspires change long before commitment begins. He starts taking better care of his health. He begins thinking seriously about his future. Not because anyone demanded it, because meeting someone meaningful naturally makes him ask, "Am I becoming the kind of man she deserves?" Jung believed that authentic relationships encourage personal growth. Healthy love doesn't ask us to become someone else. It inspires us to become a better version of ourselves. Another overlooked sign is how he handles conflict. Every relationship experiences misunderstandings. The difference isn't whether conflict happens, it's what happens afterward. A casually interested man often avoids uncomfortable conversations. He disappears. He waits for emotions to cool down. Sometimes, he simply hopes the issue goes away by itself. A man who genuinely values the connection behaves differently. Even if the conversation is uncomfortable, he wants resolution. He doesn't enjoy distance between you. He wants to restore peace because your emotional state affects his own. Notice the difference. He's not trying to win the argument. He's trying to protect the relationship. Those are two completely different priorities. Now, here's something even deeper. When a man truly thinks about you throughout the day, he gradually begins including you in his private future. This doesn't necessarily mean marriage. It means imagination. He pictures vacations. He imagines introducing you to certain friends. He wonders what holidays might look like together. He thinks about restaurants you'd enjoy or places he wants to show you. Most of these thoughts never become spoken words. They're private rehearsals of a possible future. The mind only rehearses futures that feel emotionally meaningful. Carl once wrote that the future already exists within us as a possibility, waiting to unfold. When someone consistently appears in that imagined future, it reveals how deeply they've become integrated into our inner world. But here's something equally important. None of these signs matter in isolation. Anyone can remember one detail. Anyone can send one thoughtful text. Anyone can ask your opinion once. The real evidence is the pattern. Patterns reveal character, intention, and it reveals genuine emotional investment. One thoughtful gesture could simply be good manners. Several thoughtful behaviors repeated naturally over time, tell an entirely different story. That's why emotionally healthy relationships never depend on decoding a single moment. They are built on consistency, not perfection. Why do some women leave a lasting psycholocal imprint while others fade from a man's thoughts almost immediately? Part 3. Why some women become unforgettable while others fade away. There is a question that deserves an honest answer. Let us ask ourselves again. Why do some women leave a lasting impression on a man while others disappear from his thoughts almost as quickly as they entered his life? Many people immediately assume the answer is beauty. Others believe it is confidence. Some think it is chemistry. Those things can certainly open the door, but they rarely explain why someone stays in another person's mind months or even years later. Carl Jung believed that what truly transforms us is not what merely pleases us, but what touches the deepest parts of our psyche. Every meaningful relationship has the potential to awaken something that was already waiting inside us. That is why some encounters feel ordinary, while others quietly reshape the way we see ourselves. A woman becomes unforgettable when her presence represents more than attraction. She represents an experience. Think about your own life for a moment. You probably remember certain conversations more clearly than expensive gifts. You remember the person who listened when nobody else did. You remember the person who believed in you when you doubted yourself. You remember how someone made you feel. Human memory is emotional before it is logical. That principle applies to relationships as well. Many men forget the exact words that were spoken. They rarely forget how they felt while speaking with someone. Did they feel accepted? Did they feel respected? Did they feel inspired? Did they feel understood without having to pretend? Those emotional experiences create psychological anchors. That is why a woman who brings peace into a man's life often becomes far more memorable than someone who constantly demands excitement. Excitement is powerful. Peace is rare. There is another quality that quietly leaves a lasting impression. Authenticity. Some people spend so much energy trying to become attractive that they stop becoming real. They carefully calculate every message. They hide their opinions. They agree with everything. They fear disagreement because they believe conflict will push people away. Ironically, that often produces the opposite result. It becomes difficult to know who they really are. Real connection requires something solid to connect with. A woman who calmly expresses her values, her dreams, and even her imperfections creates something genuine. She is not performing. She is revealing. That authenticity becomes memorable because it feels increasingly uncommon. Jung often encouraged people to become who they truly are, rather than wearing masks designed to earn approval. Relationships built on masks eventually become exhausting because neither person is fully known. Relationships built on authenticity create freedom. Now let's examine another reason some women stay in a man's thoughts. They have direction. Notice the difference between someone who has a life and someone who is waiting for life to begin. One woman talks passionately about her goals. She invests in friendships. She continues learning. She has interests beyond dating. Her identity remains intact, whether she is single or in a relationship. Another woman slowly allows the relationship to become her entire world. Every plan revolves around him. Every decision depends on him. Every emotion rises and falls according to his attention. Although this may look like devotion, it often creates emotional imbalance. Healthy men admire women who bring fullness into a relationship, not women who abandon themselves to maintain one. When someone has purpose, they become naturally interesting. Not because they are trying to impress anyone, because they are growing. Growth has a quiet magnetism. Now, let's shift our attention to something equally important. How do you recognize when you are not occupying his emotional world? This is where clarity becomes priceless. One of the clearest warning signs is emotional convenience. Think about the timing of his effort. Does he reach out only when he is lonely? Only when his weekend plans fall through? Only late at night? Only after long periods of silence? Convenience is not commitment. A man who thinks about you consistently does not. Reserve his attention for moments when everything else has disappeared. You become part of his everyday life, not merely an escape from boredom. Another warning sign is emotional shallowness. Some conversations never move beyond flirting. They never become curious. He knows very little about your values. He rarely asks about your ambitions. He never wonders what shaped your life. Weeks pass, yet your conversations sound almost identical. Surface conversations create surface connections. Depth requires curiosity. When someone wants to understand your inner world, they naturally begin asking different questions. Not because they memorize dating advice, because genuine interest creates genuine curiosity. Here's another overlooked sign. He never adjusts. Healthy relationships involve adaptation. As people learn each other, they naturally become more thoughtful. Perhaps he discovers that you dislike sarcasm. Maybe he realizes you appreciate honesty more than compliments. Perhaps he notices that quality time matters more to you than expensive gifts. Someone who values the relationship quietly adapts. Not because they lose themselves, because they care about your experience. Someone who remains exactly the same regardless of what you've shared is revealing something important. Your emotional world has not become significant enough to influence his behavior. That realization may hurt, but clarity is kinder than false hope. Now, let's discuss another difficult truth. Many women mistake availability for investment. A man can spend hours with you and still remain emotionally distant. Likewise, a man with a demanding career may have limited time but demonstrate extraordinary consistency. The question is, how much time does he spend with me? The better question is, how intentional is he when he is here? Presence cannot be measured by hours alone. Some people spend an entire evening together while remaining emotionally absent. Others spend one meaningful hour together that strengthens the relationship. Quality often outweighs quantity. Carl Jung believed that real encounters transform both people involved. If months pass and nothing deepens, nothing grows and nothing changes, then the connection may never have moved beyond the surface. Real relationships create movement toward greater trust, toward greater honesty, toward greater understanding. Now, imagine this situation. You decide to stop carrying the entire relationship. You stop sending the first message every single time. You stop inventing reasons to continue conversations. You stop rescuing awkward silences. Then you wait. What happens? Does he naturally move toward you? Does he initiate because he genuinely wants connection? Or does everything simply disappear? Sometimes silence answers questions that words never could. Not every relationship ends because of one dramatic event. Many simply reveal themselves through absence. That truth can feel disappointing. It can also be incredibly freeing, because every moment spent chasing inconsistent attention is a moment taken away from someone capable of giving consistent love. Jung once observed that we often cling to illusions because they protect us from uncomfortable truths. But growth begins the moment illusion gives way to reality. Reality may not always be pleasant, yet it is always useful, because only reality allows wise decisions. Part 4. The most important truth. After everything we've discussed, one truth stands above all the rest. The real goal is not getting a man to think about you all day. The real goal is becoming a woman who no longer depends on someone else's attention to feel valuable. That is where your power begins. If a man genuinely carries you in his thoughts, you won't have to spend your days decoding mixed signals. His actions will gradually reveal it. He will make room for you in his life. Follow through on what he says and consistently show that your presence matters. Not perfectly, but consistently. And consistency is what separates genuine interest from temporary attraction. Carl Jung believed that one of life's greatest privileges is becoming who you truly are. That journey requires honesty. It asks us to stop chasing what is uncertain and start investing in what is real. So, if you recognize these signs in the man you're seeing, appreciate them, but continue to watch his actions over time. Real love isn't built on promises. It's built on repeated choices. If, on the other hand, you realize the signs simply aren't there, don't waste your energy trying to create feelings that aren't growing naturally. You don't have to convince someone to value you. You don't have to earn basic consistency. You don't have to compete for someone's attention. The right relationship will never require you to abandon your peace just to keep someone interested. Instead, redirect that energy back to yourself. Invest in your health. Strengthen your friendships. Pursue your goals. Protect your peace. The more fulfilled your own life becomes, the less you'll tolerate relationships that leave you questioning your worth. Ironically, that is also what makes you more attractive, not because you're trying to be unforgettable, but because you're living authentically. People are naturally drawn to those who have purpose, confidence, and emotional stability. And when someone truly belongs in your life, you'll notice something remarkable. You won't feel anxious all the time. You won't wonder where you stand. You won't have to interpret silence or invent excuses for inconsistency. You'll feel respected. You'll feel valued. You'll feel secure. That's the kind of love worth waiting for. So, the next time you catch yourself asking, "Is he thinking about me?" Pause for a moment and ask a better question. Does this relationship bring me peace, or does it keep me living in uncertainty? That single question can save you months, or even years, of emotional confusion. If this message encouraged you or gave you a new perspective, comment the word clarity below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And your comment helps this video reach more people who may need this message today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the Love and Relationship Lab, where we explore love, relationships, and psychology inspired by the timeless wisdom of Carl Jung. Share this video with someone who may be struggling to understand mixed signals. Because sometimes, the greatest gift we can give another person isn't advice, it's clarity. Until next time, remember this: you were never meant to chase someone's attention. You were meant to build a life so grounded, so purposeful, and so full that the people who truly belong in it recognize your value without needing to be convinced. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.